In death, as in life, Diana, Princess of Wales, aroused intense feelings. Many thought her one of the greatest figures of the 20th century. Others dismissed her as an attention seeker, or a curse visited on the royal family. The wedding of Diana's parents, Johnny and Frances Spencer, was the social event of 1954. Their first home was here at Park House, in the grounds of the Queen's own Sandringham estate, where in 1961 Diana was born.
When I look back to life at Park House, I do think to myself what a wonderful, free and easy life we had. Always, I remember just laughter and jokes. Diana was a real tease. She loved to eat. She'd go into the kitchen and she'd chatter away to the staff and cajole them into giving her this and giving her that.
Just a happy little girl. I mean, all those children were full of fun. And she was 3 years older than her little brother, and her two sisters were rather more than that older than her, so she did have a little bit of an older sister or a motherly way that she looked after Charles, and it was very endearing.
Diana mostly enjoyed going to the beach, and when we got to the beach hut, Diana would be rushing around, setting everything up, getting the water on so that we could all have a drink. They would have competitions to see who could take off from the top and jump the furthest down. Some of them used to roll the whole way down. They would wander around collecting shells. It was a very carefree time.
When she was 7, Diana's parents divorced. Her father won custody of the children. For the rest of her childhood, Diana shuttled between the homes of her estranged parents. In recent years, much has been made of Diana's childhood unhappiness. When her marriage to Prince Charles broke down, his friends told writers that Diana's behavior suggested a serious mental illness, one that had begun with her parents' divorce and had later ruined her marriage. One writer who has received many briefings about Diana's behavior from Prince Charles's circle is Penny Junor.
I believe that Diana was suffering from a severe psychological disorder, and I think that she had this disorder when she went into the relationship. I think she had it, she developed it as a child.
But those who knew Diana at the time tell a different story. Her parents' divorce was acrimonious, but she knew none of the details. And afterwards she saw a lot of both her mother and her father.
Well, of course, any divorce is bound to affect children. I don't think it affected Johnny and Frances' children any more or any less than any others. After all, they were not particularly short of cash. They had two loving parents, and despite the parents being divorced, were as happy as could be expected.
Diana's childhood was extremely happy, contrary to so many versions.
I did not notice any way that the instability which she showed later started in her childhood. No, definitely not. I'd certainly never noticed it.
In the security of her own home, she became very extrovert, more or less to the point of showing off, particularly in skills that she knew she had, such as her swimming. She'd run to the top of the slide and stand there poised, and she was beautiful and slim, and shout to everyone, "Look at me, look at me."
Diana was not academic, but she was talented at music, swimming and dance.
Diana was popular at school. She was part of a very big group who were very lively, full of fun. Diana certainly wasn't the leader of the group, but neither was she just a hanger-on. There was no one leader. They were all headstrong, very lively girls.
In 1975, Diana's grandfather died, so she inherited a title.
She rushed along the corridor with her dressing gown billowing out behind her, saying, "I'm a lady, I'm Lady Diana." She was so excited.
When Diana was 15, her father remarried to Rayne, Countess of Dartmouth.
Well, I think Diana was very upset. She was devoted to her father, and I think perhaps any woman who came on the scene and wanted to take up all her father's time, she wouldn't have been too happy.
She was quite aware, I feel, that she was struggling with her schoolwork. She did try, and I think she hadn't a clue why she wasn't good. I think the underlying troubles at home in her family just affected her concentration. Her mind was somewhere else.
Diana failed all of her O-levels, but she was displaying other talents.
She'd go off on her bicycle to visit old ladies, to do their shopping for them, and she obviously had a real talent for dealing with people in that respect, and she obviously enjoyed it as well, and that was quite unusual for people of that age.
Diana helped run dances for patients at this hospital for the mentally and physically handicapped.
Diana was actually very relaxed, which was quite amazing because it was intimidating and overwhelming to walk into that huge place with the level of noise and to see some of the very severely handicapped people that we actually did have. She had most definitely a natural talent for communicating with very vulnerable people. I can remember seeing Diana do something that I was quite amazed, because she appreciated that when people in wheelchairs were taken onto the dance floor, because the handles are behind them, they were being whizzed around, but they weren't actually dancing in the same way as other people. Diana danced backwards and drew the wheelchair towards her by holding the arms of the wheelchair. Now that actually is incredibly agile and clever.
To Diana and her school friends, Prince Charles was a pin-up.
She had photos of him. She seemed to idolise him.
Charles briefly dated Diana's older sister, Sarah.
Finally she met him, and she rushed into school the following Monday saying, "I've met him, I've met him." And it was like a sort of ongoing fairy tale, and we never dreamed that it would actually come true.
Prince Charles was living in a very different world.
Problèmes du monde d'aujourd'hui seront les leurs demain. Et c'est à vous.
A bit impatient, an inquiring mind, very much like his father, full of ideas, very much like his father.
I had known the Prince of Wales since he was about 16. He was wealthy, he was good looking, he was intelligent, he was sporting, he was a man of action. He had all the aces.
There'd been a lot of talk about the dangers of this dive. The water's so cold that a minute's exposure could cause paralysis.
he hated the phrase, and he won't like hearing it again, but I mean, he was described sometimes as action man, and there he was, unquestionably the most eligible bachelor in the entire world. Who was he going to marry? Somewhere along the line he'd said, maybe 30 might be a good time to get married.
By now, Diana was enjoying the rounds of society parties and balls.
She looked magnificent whenever I saw her that summer. Quite lovely, and she seemed to have a great number of admirers. The time I remember her best was at a big ball at Belvoir Castle. Indeed, Prince Andrew was at that dance, and he danced with Diana, and of course he was her age, so that was all absolutely fine.
That summer, Diana got her first chance to make a real impression on Prince Charles at a country house barbecue.
We sat down on a bale at the barbecue. I said, "You looked so sad when you walked down the aisle at Mountbatten's funeral. It was the most tragic thing I've ever seen. My heart bled for you when I watched. I thought it's wrong. You're lonely. You should be with somebody to look after you."
Soon after, Charles invited Diana to Scotland to join him and his parents at their Balmoral estate. The Spencer family had close connections with the court. Diana's grandmother, Lady Fermoy, was lady-in-waiting to the Queen Mother.
Both grandmothers were involved, really, you might say, in the courtship. Both families were very enthusiastic about it taking place. It was definitely time that he got married, and here comes a girl who appears to be entirely suitable, so it's obvious that both families would encourage it and do what they could to promote it.
The public was soon told about Charles and Diana's romance.
And we first spotted her colleague Arthur Edwards, who was the photographer I worked with. He and I spotted her at a polo match.
I walked up with my camera and she just posed up. Oh, that's it, you know. And then I checked her age and found out she was 19, and I thought, Prince Charles, 30. He's running around with a 19-year-old girl. Doesn't sound right, so I didn't know about it.
During Diana's second visit to Balmoral, another photographer learned a little more.
We knew where Prince Charles's favourite fishing spots were, and we got to one, and we spotted a girl with him. I jumped out the car, and the girl disappeared into the trees behind Prince Charles, and he continued to fish as if there was no one with him. I watched for ages. Then I saw a hand coming round the tree with a compact mirror in her hand, and she pushed it round and wiggled it about to see where we were, and then walked away in a straight line, keeping the tree between us and her. And I thought, my God, who is this he's got? This is interesting.
He couldn't get a shot of Diana's face that day, but his rival at the Sun remembered the girl at the polo and put two and two together.
We found this nursery school, the Young England Kindergarten. I knocked on the door. Does Lady Diana Spencer work here? Yes. Would she come out and have a photograph taken?
They hung around and wouldn't go away. And I said to her, how do we get rid of them? What about if you go and have your photograph taken with them? And we were both very naive in those days and didn't realise this was not the way to get rid of photographers.
But she insisted on having two children with her from the nursery. And of course that was the picture where the sun came out halfway through the photographs and we saw her wonderful legs.
And I remember thinking, oh dear, I think I've really blown this for her. And she took one look at it, went bright red, and put her hands up to her face in absolute horror.
How well are you coping with all the press attention? Well, as you can see, You can tell. Are you bearing up with it quite well, though? Because it must be quite a strain with all of us after you. Well, it is, naturally.
At lunchtime, on occasions, we needed something. And quite often, she would be the one to say, well, I'll go out and get it. I mean, never a question of, would you mind? Because we knew what she was going to come up against. But I think she quite enjoyed belting out of the school. And in fact, one of my favourite photographs is of her running flat out with something for lunch under her arm.
She loved the camera, and she seemed to enjoy the attention in a sort of flustered, blushing sort of way. She couldn't resist it. We couldn't resist her.
Just delighted and happy. And I'm amazed that she's been brave enough to take me on. And I suppose in love. Of course. Whatever in love means.
Diana came across a present in the office of Michael Colborne, the Prince's secretary. She later explained what happened to royal biographer Anthony Holden.
Diana was looking over the wedding presents and saw one that she wasn't supposed to see, which was a bracelet with the initials G and F on it. And Camilla and Charles's nicknames for each other, or code names if you like, were Gladys and Fred. And Diana knew this from some flowers that Charles had sent Camilla when she was ill. So poor Colborne was in a very unenviable situation of having to explain to the princess-to-be that this was actually a present that Charles had ordered to give to Camilla as a sort of farewell, I'm getting married present.
Diana confronted Charles about the bracelet. According to two royal courtiers, Diana said,
I asked Charles if he was still in love with Camilla Parker Bowles, and he didn't give me a clear answer. What am I to do?
One of their colleagues told this programme,
My initial reaction was to panic. It was 10 days until the wedding. How do we get her down the aisle?
In an attempt to defuse the situation, the courtiers arranged a lunch between Diana and Camilla in a discreet London restaurant called Ménage à Trois. Senior courtiers have told this programme that when Diana returned to the palace, she said,
It was brilliant. We all understand each other.
But Diana later told a different story.
She told me that Camilla asked her, would you be spending much time hunting? And Diana said, no, I don't like horses. I fell off one when I was a child. And she could see the look of relief on Camilla's face. She certainly believed that hunting and horses was going to be how Camilla would keep Charles.
But Diana, only just 20, was swinging between euphoria and despair.
I'm sure that Diana did have reservations about getting married at that stage because her father told me so. She said just before the wedding, I'm afraid I simply cannot go through with it. I can't go through with it.
When she expressed these reservations to anyone, such as her sister Sarah, they joked it off. Sarah told her, well, your face is on the tea towel, so it's too late to do anything now. Other people said to her, well, it's just simply pre-wedding nerves. You'll be all right once the day arrives.